If you enjoy Gaeilge Weekly, want to begin feeling truly confident speaking and using the Irish language, don't forget to become a Learn Irish Online member today. I'm not going to bore you with the details of it. The membership contains so much that we'd probably be here all day. What I am going to say is head over to patreon.com/Learn Irish Online and sign up for a free trial today. If it's not for you, you can cancel anytime, but last year 92% of all signups continued past their free trial because it immediately helped them with their confidence as Gaeilge. How? By getting them using the language from day one and not just teaching token phrases or outdated proverbs. So sign up today at patreon.com/Learn Irish Online or on the Patreon app to start speaking real Irish with real confidence. Hi folks, good morning to you. Monson Wa, hope you are all doing well. Tasulam, Kul Gakrad, Igulguma, Livsha. A big thank you as always for tuning in. Mars Canach, Mila Buejas, as Tunal is shock. And slightly different episode this week. EAGRÁN Buganin Tifriul on Sochtan Show, but quite a special episode for me anyway. EAGRÁN Soch Special to Dumsa Arenos, because recently I've decided that on Gaeilge Weekly I'd like to talk a bit more about history. Ledéini an bod chréile, tas ais cinna Jane Thagum, go bhfuil mé I géirí labhairt beagnaí níos mó faoi star. Kind of Irish history, star na hÉireann, maybe international history, I guess you could call it. Is dócha gur féidir leat star idirnáisiúnta a chóirt air. In other words, history from around the world, star no scéaltaí ó timpeall down, but not so much big stuff like wars or politics or anything like that, because that gets heavy pretty quick. Ní rudí cosúil leis an bolaíocht agus cogaí nó mar sin mar Irene sé go trom, go toppy, it gets heavy fast, but more so specific little small feel-good, positive stories or different kind of quirky things from history. So scéaltaí níos lú atá dearfach, atá feel-good, slá beagnaíonn sais quirky nó difriúil gomráid leis na gná scéaltaí. And it's the perfect week to start off with one of these episodes. Is he seo an tachtan irfa chun tús a chur le cheann tin episode seo. Why? Well, because this Saturday, the 30th of May, Ceathracha saw an truckle law maybe altana. It'll be exactly 40 years since something very important happened for the west of Ireland by Ceathracha Bliain ó Harla Rodégan an a tábhachtach le haidh iarthar na hÉireann, especially for the people of Mayo. Go háirithe le muintir chun na Mayo. Now, if you haven't got a clue what I'm talking about yet, muna bhfuil cluad cén rud ó bhfuil mé ag labhairt faoi fós. Have a listen to this clip and it might give you some idea. Éis leis an clip seo agus seans go mbeidh smaoinú níos fearr ad.
What exactly is going on here?
What do you think is going on? We're building an airport, and I hope the Department of Transport doesn't hear about it. Now, don't tell them. And we're going to have it built in a very short time. You see the activity that's going on here. There's another load coming now. And I think it's marvellous, don't you?
Are you being absolutely serious about what's going on
and
here?
We have no money. But we're hoping to get it next week or the week after.
You don't really have permission, and you don't have money?
I'm not sure whether I have permission or not. But I mean, I'm going ahead anyhow, just taking a chance.
So the penny will have dropped for a lot of people. Chance ma go mai is ag a lán daoine cad a bhés muds ag labhairt faoi inniu. But if you don't know, muna bhfuil isad, that was Monsignor James Horan, who was the mastermind, the architect, the man who made Ireland West Airport knock a reality. An fearr a hug Ireland's West Airport knock, no airport Chnoch mar Ghliú River Shaw, as it was known before that, and still most people really in Ireland, certainly where I'm from, call it Knock Airport. Gandaus an chuid mód chuoine, gandaus as Gailge agus iarthar na hÉireann Arenos fós Bliain much Knock Airport, no airport Chnoch as Gaeilge Air. He was the man who brought it to life. Bhí sesin mar an fearr, a hug an ashling seo a bhí aige wig on fear hail to real life, from a dream to a reality. And if you don't know the story about how Knock Airport came to be, muna bhfuil on scale ar sad, well, I'm going to go through it today, and it really is remarkable and quite frankly unbelievable. Tá sé do chredze. And it's amazing to think this was only 40 years ago. It was 40 years ago this weekend, as I said, the 30th of May, since the official opening on Solo Ifigul. So if anybody has seen the video, Malta on Fishon Fekia Egania of Charlie Haughey with the scissors cutting the ribbon at the door as it's lashing rain, a Garra on ribbon, Egandurs, agus Eg Stalubashti, that is 30 years ago this weekend. And it was only a few months before that, in 1985, that the first flights came into the runway at Knock. Ní raibh sé a cúpla mí rivishin in EAGRÁN octocuig a tháinig an chéad cúpla eitilt isteach ge airfort chunuk were. It's an amazing story, but to get it right, we really have to go back to 1879. Honné all I gheart caithimans dul siar go octag seachto ní, which was way before I was born, and it was before Monsignor Horan's birth as well. Bhí sé sin I bhfad river rugu me héin, not Monsignor Horan. But in 1879 was the night that Knock changed from just a small little village or town in rural Mayo. That sé o just áit spiúr iarghúlta I Gunde Wayo go áit fear hallul to a seriously famous and renowned place áit will clue agus cáir timpeall an down, especially in the Catholic world and among Catholics in Mask, the Catholic timpeall an down. Why? Because that was the night that it was said that there was an apparition. Sin an ihe a dortid grau apparition no taspánu on Waidin Rura, an apparition of the Virgin Mary, Our Lady Mary. Our Lady of Knock, as many people in Ireland, of course, would say, Our Lady of Knock, mar Arglean, Alán Dini in Éireann, Urhi. And so that all went back from that night. There's different accounts, of course, and some people will believe it, some people won't. That's a story for another day. By Neartini agus Credsen Seed, Sarud Sin, Neartini Knock Credsen, Sarud Shin, whatever you think, that's fine. Payrud, Awiltug, Smuina Shin Carcalor. But around 15 people that night said, and they were 100% sure that they saw Our Lady of Knock, as it was, or the Virgin Mary from the Bible in front with the Holy Lamb and different lights and everything else, Sailsa Jifrula agus an Waidin Rura, and that was the night that changed the history of Knock and even of County Mayo forevermore until this day. And even on this day, I'm sure loads and loads of people are walking up as I'm recording this podcast agus mise ag déanú an tafadú an bud chréile seo, cínte go le lán daoine ag siúil right into the basilica, right in to where the said apparition was meant to take place on áits a Harla an taspánu an ihe sin in octag seachtaní in the lashing rain as they looked up and saw the Mother Mary on Waidin Rura and everything else agus gachrad eile. So 32 years later, Monsignor James Horan, as he was then, James Horan mar Huguer Iglam Shin, was born in 1911. So Rugu in Needseg Hainseg, eh? So even though 1879 might seem a long time back in the past, Beidir gwil cuma sin gwil se fado. But again, the man who brought this airport to life was only born about 30 years after that. An far a hug on Terrafort so whig on fear hail near Rugu Sheshanach truckle Bliain in the Yesha. So like a lot of men bored around that time, Casul let Lon fear Rugu Heart Alam Shin, he went into the priesthood in the 1930s, who has Jack's a priesthood, no Dari Shape Mar Sagart, written leads like Truckagee. And he works in a lot of different places. He was born in Mayo Rugu, Igunna Wayoe, but he worked as a priest in Galway, in Glasgow, over in Scotland, Glasgow, Holland, Shin, in Albin, Roscommon. But then in 1967, he landed down in Knock, Landalse Igunnokwara, no pun intended with the landed there. Of course, it wasn't that big a place, or there's no big industry there. It was just all about the different churches and people coming, pilgrims, Ilhrig Egtacht, to see what happened at Knock, or to see the area where it happens. Hunan Aatsa Ekal in a Harla on road Duchredshin in Uchteg Shachtoni, the place where the unbelievable happened in 1879. But of course, throughout the 60s and 70s, it was coming up to 100 years since the apparition. Vi say Chaxus with Cade Bliain on Taspanu Shin. So what they wanted to do was build a huge church, the likes of which had never been seen in Mayo. Vi Shidi Giri Shapel an a war, a Hogal, Nakrau Fekia in áit cosúil le chun na Wayo, nó fiú iartha na hÉireann, even in the west of Ireland at that time, to mark 100 years since the apparition, but also the visit of Pope John Paul II in 1979. So, chun sin a warchal, céad bliain ón tá spáinút an Mhaidin Rua, ach chomh mála sin, bhí Pope John Paul an Papa John Paul II ag teacht in 1979. So, as a result of both of those things, there were on dá rud sin. They wanted to build this huge church that would later go on to be the Basilica of Knock. Agus dearadh sé sin mar an basilica, and even to this day there's only 2 basilicas in all of Ireland. Níl gá basilica in Éireann agus timpeall na tíre ar fad, the one in Knock an gceann i Gnochra, but also as well as that the one up in Lough Derg in Donegal an gceann hús i Lough Derg hús an sin idir chun. And the Pope gave it Basilica status when he came in 1979. So this was a big time for Knock. Bhí sé seo mar an tábhachtach le haghaidh Cnochra. And something interesting happened around the time the Pope left. Harla rud éigean simúl, hart ar an am a dog on Papa. So again, for people who don't know about the 1979 visit of Pope John Paul II, daoine nach bhfuil mór an ólas acu ar níos ag seachtaí agus an court den Papa John Paul II. There'll be people listening to this who probably saw him in the flesh, who were there at the different events, because there weren't many people in Ireland who didn't go to the events that were on during those few days. Ní raibh mór an daoine in Éireann nach neachaí chuig na himachtaí sa phriúla a bhí arsúil an seachtain sin. At the time, the Irish population was under 4 million. It's not like the 5 or 5.5 it is today. Bhí sé níos lú nó ceithre mhilliú, níl sé cosúil le cúig nó cúig punca cúig cosúil leis na laethantí seo. It was probably about 3.6, 3.7 million from the info I found. Bhí sé artar 3.6, 3.7 million den ólas a tháinig mé ar lína. And it's estimated about 2.5 to 2.7 million of them attended the different papal events during those few days. So, déirtear grastal hartar 2.2 million nó 2.7 million ar na himachtaí difriúla ar ré an chóirt sin. An unbelievably big percentage of the population. This was the zenith of the Catholic Church in Ireland. Ní rá aon or eile ina rá an Anglish agus an English Catholicach níos ládra agus níos tábhachtaí in Éireann then in 1979 ná in 1979. A bit more research I did, about 85% of people attended Mass once a week. Out of everyone in the country, 85% of people went to Mass once a week. So as gach duine sa tír, gach duine sa daonra, everyone in the population, 82 fan géad, bhí stig dul chuig an affran or óháin in I na seachtaine. Unbelievable, duchreid, and of course it's changed since then, but this was a massive deal when it happened. And I was listening to an interview with Terry Riley, a brilliant interview he did on the Indo Daily. Bhí mé géisteach le aglah le Terry Riley, aglah iontach rinne sé ar an Indo Daily podcast, and he's very much an expert on Knocker reports how it happened. Monsignor Horan tá session in a Hanoli ar na rudí seoir ar Airfort Chonochrura agus Monsignor Horan agus mar singe. And one thing that he said was that Monsignor Horan, as much as he enjoyed the papal visit, cégur bhain sé tatnamh as court an Papa, one thing he was annoyed by was he was in Knock, the Pope was in Knock on the second last day of the tour. So bhí an Papa i Gnochra an dara lá dearnach. But he didn't stay overnight as much as he did whatever the Mass or whatever he did at Knock, cégur nearna sé on tafran as gachra dela ag Gnochra. He left early enough that evening because he had to go somewhere for the day after and then get a flight from Shannon, because there was no airport in Knock. Ní rá ein airport ar nói i Gnochra, or no airport really nearby. The closest one that would have actually been able to take his plane and go to Boston, where he was going afterwards on Ceannas Congri in a rá Etzels a hógal agus Jailal lena Etzels agus Lannan Troy with Boston on the Hay Dot Chella around Sheikh Dull was down in Shannon. Now, I did look this up and it didn't make 100% sense to me because I was thinking, well, I'm sure he had stuff to do the next day. And he did. The following day, the Pope went to Maynooth, Limerick, and then eventually on to Shannon for different events and flew out of Shannon. So an lá dar gion hui an Papa wig Maynooth, Limnock, agus an sin Erfurt na Sunnana. So I don't really buy into the argument of, well, the Pope wanted to stay in Knock that night, but had to leave because, he had to go to an airport the next day. He had other events to go to. But one way or another, around this time, just after the Pope's visit, Ceathracha courts on Fápa, Monsignor James Horan decided, Rinne sé an chinne, we're going to build an airport here. We're going to do it for two main reasons. Like gá fá níos mó na aon cín eile, and that is one, so pilgrims can come and visit the shrine or the basilica as it was at this point. Go make pilgrims no ilithrig as Gaeilge in an seacht chuig Connacht agus courts a horts an áit agus courts a horts an basilica. But as well as that, Commatlashin, we're going to provide services and industry to the people of the west of Ireland. Támachon servicey agus jablan postana a hort the winter na heran go horithe na dini óga, especially the young people. And in several interviews around this time, Monsignor Horan spoke of how important it was, he felt, to bring jobs and bring opportunities for the young people here at the turn of the decade, leaving the 70s going into the 80s. Ag fág an na seachtaí ag dulasteach chuig na hugtaí. Now, I want you to think of 1980 in Ireland. Some people listening to this may have been live then, some people not so much, some people maybe didn't grow up in Ireland. Níartí ní géistil seo seans go raibh se bhain in níide gochtó agus na níide gochtaí in Éireann. Níartí níile seans nach raibh se bhain churbe cosú lumpsa. But I want you to think at the time, living in Ireland in the 1980s, one of the grimmest decades really we had for a lot of reasons. Ceann in the decades is mass agus is dúrcha a bhí agin le céad bliain anús agus bhí a lán cúisina le sin. A lot of reasons for that. The economy was very poor. Economíocht an a lag fad. As well as that, there were very few jobs. Ní more an pushed churbe. Immigration, people leaving the country, immercha daoine ag fág an na tíre was at an all-time high. People going to London, Boston, and people losing their kids to have to go to different places around the world. And some of those people are listening to this podcast right now. Níartin na daoine sin tá sibh sé géisteach leis an bod chéile díorcanis. And you guys moved. My uncle, for example, moved to the US during the 1980s, and he spent 30, 40 years there. Agus chaid struck no carcha Bliain an sin. So it was a common thing for people, bhí sé anna chotíanta ag an am the winter na Héireann, to be leaving the country, and it was a bit of a dark decade and very little opportunity in Ireland to do more in Destiny in Éireann. So I suppose on one hand you can kind of say, and that was, especially true Leisgel Gohori Havishin fear in the west of Ireland. It's not like today where kind of things are spread out a bit more in a will ruddy Scapamak Biogninismo. The contrast in between the rural areas in the west of Ireland and Dublin was even greater than it is now. On Cuddersnocht, it's your ear na Héireann agus áitsana amwifwin tua agus Blauclia bhí sé fiú níos mó ná mar tá sé inis. And of course, it's not like now where you have WhatsApp and you can get up to Dublin from almost anywhere in the country inside 3 or 4 hours. Tíbh siad a trí nó cera or chlig. There was not the same infrastructure, not the same technology, your own infrastructure chéna, your own technoliacht chéna. So the country, if you were living in Dublin, but your parents were in Mayo, for example, must relate grau tusa hús im Loclia, ach bas chunne weo I the Hishmahori, it all felt a lot bigger. Wahi sé o wad níos mó and a lot more distant. I mean, I wasn't there at the time, but I'm guessing you would have almost been as well off to be in London. It probably felt pretty much as far away. Wahi sé beidir hart knocker céine idir an dá áit. So on one hand, you can kind of see Monsignor Horan's idea here. Lorfáin tátuman an smuoinú a bhí ag éáil. You know, build this airport, bring in jobs, bring in tourism and all the rest of it. Tátuman an tuairsocht a hortsasteach, tátuman an dzabana agus postana a hort the choin yoga, and so and it'll provide opportunities by Jesh now. But at the same time, and we're going to get on to how he raised the money to do it, Thomas an Lennon try agus Lauert, we can't hui a value say on target hona iena. Can you imagine if in 1980, 1981 there's a knock on the door ta cannag an durs, ní jeg octo hain, and someone says to you, I know you have no money, tá Sam nach bhfuil aon airgad. I know your son just emigrated to London and he's not coming back. Tá Sam go neachi the walk go London agus ní bhaidh sé ag Ceathracha. I know your daughter left to Boston and you haven't heard from her yet. Tá Sam go bhfuil inín hall mastún agus ní léon rud clust agat wehi go fóil. And you're struggling yourself to pay the bills. Tá tus ag strackled hon the billy a íoch. But would you mind giving us £200 for an airport down the road? An mécht an £200 a hortstún hon an Terrafort sa a hógal hís an bóthir. You would say, get away from my house and never come back. A rai lat miach agus ná tar arash. But Monsignor Horan, who was the man at the centre of this all, and we haven't even spoken too much about him. Ní me trace more on the Ráfhui until now, Gaeilge, but he had something that very few other people had. This ability on Cumas Shaw and this charisma on Charisma Shaw on Dini of Yalu to kind of attract or lure people in and to buy into this amazing vision that he had. Hon Chanachastach Whig on Evogs and Royer Duchredsa of the Ega. And Terry Riley, again, who was a big help while I was preparing this episode, vi session in a chawr more dumpsa agus misha ag olvu don EAGRÁN show. One thing he said in that interview I was listening to, Rudawan a dort session Igyans in the Hoglev around me against the glow, he said Monsignor Horan was a doer. When he decided he wanted to do something, that was it. There was nothing was going to stop him. Ní raibh aon rud chun chur stacker, ní raibh aon rud chun stop a chur leis. So he said, I'm going to do this. And at first it looked quite good. Why? Well, because he got money from the government. Charlie Haughey, who had a bit of a connection with Monsignor Horan, and Charlie Haughey himself, who was born in Mayos, maybe had some feeling towards this or was a bit biased towards any projects in Mayo. Beidir Grauship Bugni Cleinta, which Sunskadali, Gunne was as Irish politics tends to work. Mar Ibrian Politiok Neheran, even nowadays, in different places around the country, and that's in the Yafrula Simple Natira. He agreed to give Monsignor Horan 10 million Irish punts, 10 million punt, to do this project and to make this airport on Terrafort so again. And now again, one thing Terry Riley said, who's written a book called A Wing and a Prayer, and if you want to find out more about Knock Airport Monsignor Horan, I'd highly recommend buying it. Mata simad in Airport Chnocura August Komala Shin Le Monsignor Horan Wulhin Gomor and Lauer Shin Ochyanak. A Wing and a Prayer, the story of Knock Airport, I think it's called A Wing and a Prayer. You'll definitely find Kinsa Gomait Walan a Imshoe online or in bookshops Erlina no Suppi Lauer. But he kind of said that Haughey didn't really know that Monsignor Horan was trying to do a proper airport. Girl Monsignor Horan Igir Airport Cart Ayena. And maybe that just goes to show how ridiculous an idea it was. Kiko Shafodzuk Earthly Arau on Smoinu Shaw at the time, at least, of course, easy to look back now and say it was brilliant, and it was, but very few people believed in him. You're a more antini credjuns sa Smoinu of Eg Monsignor Horan. So Terry Riley seems to say that Haughey actually believed it was more so just a little airstrip, and, you know, maybe it would be for whatever, pilot training or something like what Galway Airport has turned out to be, unfortunately, nowadays. Rudakeen's Cosula Airport, Nagalliv and the Leahendy Shaw, or even Invern Airport that goes out to the Aran Islands, if anyone has been to either of those. Cosula Airport, Inzeron, Mata Anya, Teresh, Ave, Egg, Nakeen. Shin, the two main airports, I suppose, in Galway, even though there's barely any flights from either of them. On the Frive Airport, Igunde, Nagalliv, Kinlochwill, Ian Etzelsi, Igdol, Wehu, Nalahenty, Shaw. But Monsignor Horan didn't have plans for just a little airstrip. He wanted a proper airport with proper flights going around Europe and around the world. Etzelsi, Igdol, Timpel, Europa, Agus Timpel, on down. So he was delighted when he got this 10 million. In 1981, they started construction. Hussy Sheedig Togal an airport in Níosa and things were looking good and more people were believing in this project. Níosmó daoine in an credu sa tionscadal seo. But it was a time of great political instability and uncertainty. Bliain éigeantacht politiúil in Ireland at the time in Éireann ag an am. As we mentioned, conditions weren't great near an Ceathracha, but as well, there was about 3 general elections inside 18 months at the start of the 80s with 3 Ulhaucán ag tús na hugtadí Tíbhaiste de 8 míd and there was a change of government Fianna Fáil out, Fine Gael in, so Jimmy Fianna Fáil agus tháinig Fine Gael isteach and a lot of the funding was cut back. So all of a sudden, there was a shortfall of roughly about 4.5 million pounds or punt. Hartar Kerapunka Kuig Villion punt. And in today's money, it's estimated that would be more or less about 12 million euro. Hartar Ga Villion euro Jake. So how is this going to work? Nobody had any money, especially down in Mayo at that time and in the west of the country. Gunnewayo, Eganam Shin, in Irhan and Sierra, near Ein Arga the Gania. And there was a lot of talk about possibly giving up, possibly not being able to just continue. Vielan Kaints Eganam Shin, nach make Shidanan Lanunch Arai. But again, Monsignor Horan wasn't taking no for an answer. Ní rá sé chun ghlacu le no mar fargrats. Bhí sé chun lananch. And I found a great article online talking about what happened next. It's from Substack. It's a Substack. And unfortunately, I don't have the name of the person who wrote it because the profile just says 15-minute coffee. Shin an tanamatar air on profile. But this is what 15-minute coffee writes in terms of the funding. Horan drove on, even when funding was cut after the 1982 election. To make up for the shortfall, he launched an ambitious jumbo draw, a lottery. The jumbo draw offered a stunning array of prizes, including cars, houses, cattle, sites for houses, heating oil, which attracted huge interest, and a lot of money. It was a wild concept, especially in a place where many people had never flown before. But Horan knew how to tug at heartstrings. He travelled the world, he went to Australia, the US and beyond, appealing to the Irish abroad, urging them to support his dream. And that dream, again, to go back to what it was all about, it was to bring pilgrims to the Knock Shrine, to the Knock Basilica, and again, even to this day, people, I guarantee you, as I'm speaking, there are flights going in and out of Knock, and some people on those flights, Niart Dini ar an Hetzelsi Shin, maybe not Niart, but some people, Kupla Dina on Shus and Shud, here and there, are flying in specifically for the Knock Basilica. Cohoriha no Nismol Niner Della Huntol Huig on Basilica. So even 40 years later, 2026, this dream is still going. And the other thing is, as well, was to provide jobs, to provide local economy, Hun Hauer Hortston Aklamiocht Otsul Augustan Postana O Horts the Huinioga. And still, if you go to Knock Airport today, it's an airport owned and run and managed by local people. Dini Otsula atá an sin mar na húnéirí agus na daoine ag obair tíbhaiste den airport. So, he managed to get this 4.5 million somehow. Terry Riley has another great story, tá scéalaíonta go Terry Riley san aglah seo, about how it wasn't just the jumbo draw, but there were other, whatever way they can make money, pay Vala Charaushi the non arga the value, they managed to do it. For example, when they had the runway done, but they still needed more money for the terminal, they were on runway Jainta ach vi nismo argage ag tasla wehu hon on Creekfort a Hogal. They allowed people to bring their cars onto the runway and to basically drive it as fast as they could, or do races down the runway. Vishi then on Rossi Ayanu she's on runway, and they paid whatever it was, £10 to be able to do that, which obviously you couldn't do on the main road knock out on saying air on Preve Boher. And eventually it was finished, and in 1985 in October the 25th on Kugala is fihe míarf over Níjagok the Kug, the first ever planes arrived at Knock Airport. Here's a clip of Monsignor Horan being interviewed as he's watching up on the mound, the viewing location at Knock Airport, which you can still go to today on also to Fos in on Dulhuiga as he's watching the first few planes coming in. Agus Cheshin ag féchans ar an géad cúpla etchelt ag teacht is teach.
When you look across there at the hundreds on the hills and on the opposite side of the runway out to the perimeter.
It reminds me of the Papal Visit. That's right. It reminds me of the Papal Visit when the hills at Knock were covered with people. I see crowds and crowds of people over there on the hills, and I'm glad that I have an opportunity of viewing this aircraft taking off.
The historic first takeoff from Knock, even as the 737 disappeared into the mist as 707 was approaching.
So needless to say, it was an emotional day for him. Gandaus vi mar lá mo chonach do, and I guess 1986 then was the day that people will remember more so because it was the official launch or the official opening on Solu na Uscailsa Ifigul in Níodeachtaí this weekend 40 years ago, and Ceathracha Ceathracha Bliain O'Hin. Charlie Haughey came down. There were huge crowds, and the funny thing is the weather was the exact same for United Dúrach Marangana as it had been the night of the apparition in 1879. There were storms, the rain was pouring down, vi stormacha, vi an báiste ag stalla timpeall na háitse. But it didn't dampen people's spirits. Fós vi dine an sásta to witness this momentous day that, imagine growing up throughout the 50s, 60s, 70s in Mayo, wherever it was in Mayo, or even in Galway or Leitrim, Roscommon, Sligo, in Connacht, saoly a bheith ag fásu níos I gúil chonacht I rith na blianta sin and thinking there would be an airport. You'd maybe think, well, Galway might get one at some point, Beidir might ceann ag Gailge ag Point Eig, and you would have never thought in the middle of the countryside in Mayo there would be this proper airport. I lór an túi I gunnewe go meach an Terfort ceart an Terfort mór seo. And again, it wasn't just a little runway, it wasn't, no disrespect to other airports in the Géirí size of a drochvéisach for airports ella, but it wasn't Sligo Airport or even Donegal Airport or Kerry would be like today. Okay, maybe started something like that, but it grew and it grew, it grew. Dáiste agus dáiste agus dáiste. And probably the forgotten part of the Knock Airport and Monsignor Horan story, Beidir on písa a dhéantar d'arma there madra leis an scéal seo go minic, is that unfortunately Monsignor Horan didn't live really to see what the airport would go on to become. Ní rá sé an bio agus ní rá sé timpeall na háit, he didn't kind of stick around the place or survive. Chuna bheith in an féchans cad a Harla leis an airport and the amazing success on ra dochredsa a bhí ag Knock agus airport chunach ire na blianta, and that's still going on to this day agus fós siúl go dtí an lá atá an jahan. So on the 30th of May, as we mentioned, there in Truchalá mi Bealtaine, there was the official opening via Solu Ifigul, and then only about 2 months after that, on the 1st of August 1986, on Gaeilge Míleúna sa Níodeachtaí, he died while on a pilgrimage in Lourdes, Forshay Boss Hall in Lourdes, and he was actually the first ever body or human remains to be brought back through Knock Airport. Bhí sesin mar an chéad chorp chun Ceathracha Trade Airport chunuk wera. So he did see part of his dream, but unfortunately not all of it. But one of his big dreams, Cian, it's in Hashlinging, will bring loads he is mo a viega, now that the next time the Pope would come back, he would use Knock Airport. And in 2018, when Pope Francis came to Ireland, I Gavils Huchteg, near Hánig on Pop Prontius Wigaren, where did he land? Not Shannon, not Dublin, which it's 34 million passengers or anything like that. Liam.learnirishonline, 34 million posh near North Machine. He landed on the hill in Knock. Landal say Ern Gunnock, who's sun e Gunnock were. To this day, there is now 1 million passengers. This is expected to be the first year where there's over 1 million passengers by Gavils Fihishay in Bliain that mar an chéad bhliain no capter gomaisha mar an chéad bhliain in bhfuil níos mó no milliún Passionary. Michael O'Leary was there only a few weeks ago to mark 40 years of Knock Airport. Bhí O'Leary an sin CEO of Ryanair, cúpla seachtain ó hin hon Ceathracha Bliain Knock Airport, Airport chunach a warcall, and he said he sees no reason why that can't grow to 2 million in the next 10 years. Ní can say ein chúis no ein fád nach bhfuil siad an an Lananshrai go 2 million passionary I rith na blianta os ar gore, and he even said they're looking at a potential base, a Ryanair base there that would allow early morning flights and late night flights as well, and that could be the next step forward for Knock Airport. Chance go mai sin mar an chéad céim eile airport chunuk were. It's an unbelievable story. Scale duchred, and again, it's sometimes it's tough to find the right words. Tá sé dachar on the focal ceart aimsú instead of just saying it's unbelievable, but it's unbelievable in the literal sense of the word. Tá sé in lá réire unbelievable duchred, that who there, let's say in the 70s, could have ever imagined that in 2026, and think about all the airports that have failed since then, Moswinian tú faoin na airports eile agus hep arthú ó hin. It's one thing even getting this set up, but then to go through with the 90s, the 2000s, to grow, to survive the crash, on bheith an markdal tríd an cúlú economiachta, something that the likes of Waterford, Sligo and Galway didn't do. Áitina cosúil le Port Lorga agus húsan sin is Sligoch agus I gconaí nó cathair na Gaillimhe, few places that are much bigger and would have more tradition in aviation, that have more population, le níos mó daonra agus comát le sin le níos mó daoine, even despite, I'm sure, a lot less people doing pilgrimages now. Cé go míon a bhád níos lú daoine nó ilithrig ag dul go háitina cosúil leis an screen ag go nachhuiir like the Shrine and Knock. It has still not just survived, but it's gone from strength to strength. Tá sé tar éis dul ó neart go neart. And as I record this over the last half hour, I'm sure there's been a plane touching down from Birmingham and another one going off to Frankfurt or wherever else it might be. Ceann ag landal ó Birmingham, ceann eile ag dul go Frankfurt, no payouts timpeall na Europa, wherever it might be around Europe. I'm in Seville this week as I record this episode. Tá mise is Seville an tachtan seo agus mis ag tafaidú on Lagan Shudge Fud Gréile. Unfortunately, there's no flight from Seville to Knock. It would be great if one day there is. An Druch or ní léon etzels ó Seville go Chonach Rura. Bheadh sé iontach laig an mátá. But if you head 2 hours to the west of here on the bus, maithín tusa gá or chlig trasna na Torana across the border into Portugal. So Fort St. Gael, you get to Ferro Airport and you can fly up directly to Knock. And equally, I can get in the car and go 2.5 hours east to Manan Gá or Gale, no Dul Gá or Gale Chlig, Huig Malaga and Malaga Airport, Airport Malaga, and again fly to Knock 2 or 3 times a week. Etzels go Knock no Chunachwer Gá no 3 or Inai na Seachtana. So, because of what happened in 1879, Marialler cad a Harla in 1878 with the apparition, whether it happened or not or whatever, doesn't matter. It's coming, mas ruddy gur Harla sé no near Harla sé, but whatever happened that night, whatever those people saw, and then the birth of Monsignor James Horan in 1911, nor rugu James Horan savli ní jegus ainjeg, still over 120 years later, níos mó na céad sa fiche bliain níos Janie, it affects and has a positive effect on my life as I sit here in Seville. Tá tunca dearfach ag sin ormsa agus mission seo Seville, an even bigger positive impact on the people of Mayo and the west of Ireland. Tuncar fiú níos dearfaí muintir iartha na hÉireann agus muintir chunné Wayo. To finish off, I'd like to read out a little lyric from the Christy Moore song about Knock to make Geary Críoch a chur leis an bud chréile léamh amach ceann to na lyricí ón ára atá Christy Moore faoi Airfort Chonach Mhuire. Once this quiet crossroads was a place of gentle prayer, from Fatima to Bethlehem and Lourdes to Kilshama, I've never seen a miracle like the airport up in Knock. Slán agus Bannacht.